What an incredible honor this is to be introducing Bruce. Bruce, man, you are all over the map. You know, you're at the facial pain unit. You published in an endo journal. We were talking about this over DMs as an orthodontist. You started the morning floss. Before we get into any of it, how the hell do you have time to do any of this?
You kind of just glom on to people doing great things and just kind of hitch a ride. And we all have our lanes, we all have our little areas of expertise. And sometimes I think I don't know anything, although I still think I don't know anything. And if you don't stick your foot in the door, and this is something that it's, people say, well, how'd you get into speaking and stuff? And I said, students would say, wow, we really like what you have to say. You're really honest. You swear a lot. We like you. And I said, okay. So I went to one group and I said, hey, why don't you let me speak? Oh, we don't know who you are. You're nobody. And I said, okay, why don't you pay me like 1/5 of what you're going to pay anybody else? And if I suck, then don't hire me back. But if I don't suck, then you're going to pay me this much. And people like that ballsy kind of, you don't ask, you don't get. And, my father's in the, it's when to volunteer, when not to volunteer, and when to stick your neck out. My father's in the British Army in World War II, and he always said, if you're ever in a situation and they ask for a volunteer, take one step back. And I said, why? Well, I don't understand. He says, because then it looks like everybody beside you is taking one step forward. I'm like, oh, okay. But sometimes you just have to open your mouth. And look, people who know me know I've opened my mouth way too many times, said a lot of dumb stuff, got myself in trouble. But usually, they recognize I'm doing it for the right reasons. So I can't sit still. I always want to do something. And if I see an opening where I think I can actually make a contribution that doesn't, that's not a piece of garbage, then I'll give it a shot. And I've kind of also fallen into a lot of things asked backward, which we can get into if you want. But, if I could tell anybody anything, it's just don't be afraid to stick your hand up.
I love that mentality because you never know what's coming ahead of you if you don't try, right?
No.
And so,
And, if you fall flat on your face and you're like, shit, that was terrible. Get
okay,
back
say
up.
love you, right?
Nice you
Yeah,
tried.
like I teach yoga, and I was doing a yoga class originally, when we were all sitting at home staring at the ceiling. I was doing them on Peloton, and they're teaching 10,000 people at a time. And so
Yeah.
I don't know, it was tree pose or something, and the instructor went whoomp, and she fell right out of it. And she said, well, now we're all human. And I thought, she fell? Like I was like, she can fall? In my head, I'm thinking, I thought she'd never fall, and then I realized, yeah, yoga doesn't care if you fall and you just get back up. Like yoga doesn't mind is what one teacher always said to me. And I thought, you know what? We all fall flat on our face. We all do stuff that, doesn't look great at the end of the day, but you are human.
You make
Just
it
be
work.
thankful you're not, doing your maiden voyage of a, I don't know, coronary artery bypass because,
Well,
ditching the gingival seed and making a mistake there are two wildly different extremes. So you got to put
I,
it in perspective.
I hear that. I hear that. I like how you're jumping into realms almost, and that like alongside dentistry, but different avenues of growth, such as morning floss. And I've heard of morning floss for quite a long time. And I'm a member of Morning Floss. I think you
Thank
provide
you.
a
Thank
ton
you.
of info.
Yes.
Can you tell our audience what is Morning Floss and why did you start this?
Okay, so about 8 years ago, I was waiting to get my hair cut, and the guy in the chair, so cool, had tattoos, was saying he's in law school, and I'm like, who is this guy? I just know nerdy dentist. I want to be his friend. Like, who is it? Like, he's so interesting. So the barber Matt introduced us, and we started talking, and then we swapped numbers because we were talking about something. I can't remember what it was about somebody I knew at a law firm, whatever. Slowly but surely we got to know each other, and 8 9 years later here we are, and Elliot's actually engaged to a dentist, which is cool, so he's dentistry adjacent. And he said, like, there's just this gap where people consume information and they want to consume it in a fast, fun, and not feel like they're being hit over the head with it kind of way. And you need to know about what the government's doing. You need to know what's coming down the pike from technology, and there's a way to do it without, the snore law being invoked, where 2 seconds, what, and or you put it down, or you try to read it before bed, and you're like clunk, but this is like under 6.5 minutes or something like that. And it's so much fun, and we mesh, and you would be surprised. Like him and I write it together. We have a giant writing team of two, and it started in August and it took off. Like it's only been a few months, and we feel we found a gap, where people are like, wow, this is fun. We're putting people together from across the country. We're highlighting our colleagues. Like we just had a piece on Ken Montague on the weekend, who I've known for years. And this he's huge in the art world, and, highlighting Black art, and, creating this inclusive environment. I was at one of the first art showings he did. It was literally wedged in the hallways of his house, just like it's called Wedge Toronto. So we have people that are doing so many interesting things. And the one thing that I think I would say is, just like you've proven, and you've both proven, is dentists think they're incapable of doing anything. I've had dentists come up to me and say, well, I can't do another job. I don't know how to do anything. And well, you run a business, you know how to think, you know how to project manage. Like, look at you, you're running courses. Look at you, you were a consultant. Now you're in dental school. I don't know if the guitar is behind you for effect or you actually play it, but yeah, it's just cool.
we got John Mayer over here.
Yeah, really. So, it's great to build something that people love and that people get something out of. And I always say, everybody likes to go to the party and get a goodie bag. So if you can walk away from Morning Floss and say, hey, I learned something, or share it, have a laugh, then we've succeeded. If you want to know what we argue about, it's the jokes. We argue about the jokes. So, those are our biggest problems that I think that we're facing right now.
Never get rid of those. I read for the jokes. So those are highlights.
I hope you like the ones that are mine. So, it's a badge of honor.
Neither of you signed them, so I don't know who's.
No. We like to be anonymous. Yeah.
What's interesting about dentists and dentistry at large is there's such a spectrum of dentists and their, I don't want to say their ability, but maybe their wants and desires to learn and grow. Because it's so easy in dentistry just to hunker down and say, I'm so narrow focused on this practice I'm running or working in, and I don't really care what's going on the outside of dentistry. I was so surprised that like the dental school conference, which we were all at, there were so few people asking about the Canadian dental plan, right? Like the first step that the government's taking in a big way to sort of bring dentistry in a whole different sector. So I just want to know if you have the data on this, but who are your readers? Who are the people that are really thinking like this?
The majority are dentists, and we have so many hygienists, and the hygienists, as you know, are super organized and very engaged in the process and in prevention, and everybody sees the benefit as a true benefit, because it's bringing people to the dental office that maybe were afraid because of financial reasons or whatever to come to the dental office. So now they're coming in, maybe they'll get the exam, maybe they'll get a cleaning, and then maybe they'll get good oral hygiene instruction. And then, the following year, and everybody says, well, it's not enough money. It's not great. We'd all like it to be perfect and, pay for everything, but that's not reality. But we have to see right now in its nascent stage that it's going to bring people in and allow us to educate them, and they can educate their families. And as a result, we always talk about oral health instruction. Okay, well, now we're going to give instruction to people who have never had it before, or maybe are unaware. And, one of the things you said was dentists, it's not, I don't think you said they can't. I just think it's not an inability. It's sort of just lack of a bandwidth. Sometimes we just think we don't have enough time. And that's part of, what we're doing in Morning Floss. We're bringing the stuff to you in bite-sized chunks, and you can click and hyperlink to what you want, but it allows you to read, get an over or meta view, and then dive in where you want, have a laugh. Toothed, by the way, people love that. People are obsessed with that, which is great. So I just think, Elliot even says this, dentists, a lot of times they're in their silo because he sees this with his fiance, that you're working so hard and, you almost forget there's the world out there. And sometimes you think it's a little scary out there and you're just like, I'm going to hunker down. I'm just going to narrow focus. And I just don't have the time or the ability or the energy to focus, going beyond what you do in your office. And I think that's a little unfortunate. And that's where the internet has failed us, because look at the FCDSA. People were so happy to meet people from all over. We saw each other. I don't think we ever met in person until then, and you're seeing people speak you never heard of. And it's baked into us that we want to be around people. And I don't think we've been around people for so long that the internet makes it, everybody thinks it's so great to do a Zoom. It's not. It's convenient, but I'd rather meet Necky in person, and see that he's 8 feet tall and go like, whoa, this guy truly is a giant.
Well, already wearing the same clothes, right? So
yeah, you should have called me ahead of time, man.
So Bruce, I got to ask you, you're taking, this must take you a long time to do every week. You're obviously doing it because you have a passion for dentistry, and I 100% respect that. But where do you want to see Morning Floss grow? I love the articles. I think it's great. But where is this going to go?
We have a lot of plans coming down the pike, and certain things that have been happening over the last few weeks, which are very exciting. And people have been coming to us, which is really cool, saying, what if, could we work together in this regard? And we're thinking, what? It's sort of that nerdy mentality that, I just said before, I'm being invited to the cool table to talk. So, media in this space, there's multiple opportunities from, a podcast, which is another version of Morning Floss with interviews, and other little things that, are sort of surprises, coming down the pike. But we all absorb information in different ways. And if we can find multiple prongs with which to do that and meet people where they are and connect people from across the world who go, oh, what's this person doing in Ontario? What's this person doing in BC? Oh, what's the Hygiene Association doing? What does this government thing mean to me? It's this central meeting hub. It's like going to a coffee shop and talking to your friends.
I like it.
For sure. I'll tell you a quick funny story about the origins of Dentistry Poppy, which has become literally, I hate the name so much. I wish I could change it, but it's, the domain's already mine, so I'm going to keep it. I actually had someone in clinic come up to me, like one of the old demos, and she's like, what? Who's Dentistry Papai? You'll never get it. Just stop right there. Anyways, but what my initial intention was, because I just left consulting and I was in a space of, we were just vicious researchers, right? We would just get info from online scattered across the web and just put it in a deck and sell it back to the client, right? Essentially what the job of a consultant is. And I thought, hey, why don't I use my research skills, which I've developed over, the time working here, and do this for dentistry. So centralize the dentistry news. And that was the initial idea of Dentistry Poppy. It wasn't, a personal brand. It wasn't anything like that. But what I found so frustrating was there's so little, open source info about dentistry, especially Canadian dentistry, out there. You have your every once in a while Dental Corp comes up in the news, or, Smile Direct Club or something like that. But there's not this, vast, lake of information you can get access to. I wonder, is that a frustrating point for you as well?
How we call the information is very interesting. And, there's a lot of work that goes into that in distilling, but we're not really doing anything differently than what dentists do every day, which is distill a whole host of information, read it, and try and make it bite-sized and digestible for our patients. And, it's one thing to deal with the information, and what's more difficult is to deal with the misinformation. And we do have themes. We like to cover politics. We like to cover human interest. We like to cover stuff that's funny, like the hockey player pulling out his own tooth. That's just gold of interest. People, people love that kind of stuff. So, there's always room for many sources of information, but we think we found this way to distill it in a way that is entertaining yet informative, yet you don't feel like you're being lectured to or at. Like they say, you should never should on anybody, and it sounds like what it sounds like, should, but you should, because no one likes to have, a finger wagged in their face and you need to know this and you should know this. This is just, we're inviting people in every Saturday, and people send me pictures. Actually, it was a little weird at first. One Saturday morning, I started getting all these pictures of people's legs, and I was like, whoa. And then I realized they're holding a coffee and they're going, I'm reading Morning Floss. Like, oh, okay. This was getting borderline odd and creepy. And people like it. It's like a destination thing, first thing on a Saturday morning. And it's almost like dentists across Canada are coming to meet on Saturday morning.
Ooh, I like that.
You said you were chatting about it, etc. So, to be able to bring information that you need to know about the dental benefit. You need to know what's there in technology, and you don't have all the time in the world to read it all. It's just impossible. So we do the reading for you, and then we disseminate that information, and we highlight people doing crazy and interesting and transformative things. And we're just excited that people enjoy it as much as they do. Even I have non-dental former patients, or even my sister reads it, and she's not a dentist. And they say, and they can, I have a friend who's a real estate agent, Russell, and he says, I'm not even a dentist, but I really enjoy reading it. Just so, so then I know we've hit a sweet spot of giving out information that just doesn't seem, too scholastic or overly academic, even though it is. We're educating, but we're educating in a fun way, almost like the Khan Academy. I don't know if you've ever looked on that.
No, saved my career.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's how I understood the circulatory system. So there's so many different ways to bring information to people, and we hope we found one that's educational and entertaining.
So I want to know how, the story of how you and this cool tattooed lawyer engaged to a dentist started this business, because I know it just doesn't come together. And I think you said a barbershop.
No, that was 8 years ago when we met, but literally, we've been talking about this for quite some time, and we launched it just this August, in August of 22. So it's quite recent, and the way it's taken off is just, we're thrilled that people are loving it so quickly and are so engaged and sharing it as much as they do. But but it was a chance. Like I said before, we stuck our foot in the door. We saw a gap where people were struggling to get information and be entertained and not fall asleep. So, but we didn't know for sure that they'd love it. It's like going out on a date. You didn't know right away, and you took a chance, and maybe that date didn't work out. You went on another date, and you met someone different. But that's what we're doing. And we worked really hard, but we talked about it for so long. And then, we have some great support from other people in the industry, in the news industry, who, we can ask questions of. And they said, just go do it. You got to dive in. And they've even said to us, half the time they're doing stuff, they're taking chances too. They don't know for sure. I'm sure not you're in dental school, but Neki, I'm sure sometimes you try things.
Oh, of course.
And you're like, yeah, like, okay, see one, do one, teach one, off we go.
Now, Bruce, I got to ask, creating a media, in like information for dentists to consume carries a lot of responsibility, because as we all know, the facts that are involved in media can be, distorted depending on your own view. How do you maintain the truth? How do you maintain, like, without putting your own personal lens on it? I'm just so curious, because everything we see on TV that we consume has been distorted on some spectrum. And I'm sure you can agree with that. How do you maintain being in a media industry to maintain the truth?
Well, first of all, it helps when your business partner was ran the office for the Minister of Health and has worked in compliance and run another media, another healthcare media company. So, And that's why people find it interesting to speak to us, because they're like, wait a second, so you know dentistry, and he knows compliance and research and the law and how to dissect information. So it's about surrounding yourself with the right people.
Totally. Okay.
Because if he hadn't, if Elliot didn't have all this tremendous wealth of experience and understanding, and he can pick up anything. I think, in a year he could probably do dentistry after, hanging out with his fiance long enough. I think he could take a crack at a crown and probably do a decent job. Probably better than I could at this point. I haven't cut a crown in 300 years, but, it's having that experience. And if he didn't have that experience, then we'd have to go to somebody to get that experience, to be able to really read and distill and analyze the information. I'm still involved in research. So in terms of critically looking at the literature, that's something I'm still a part of, because that's a muscle you need to flex. And sometimes you can easily lose that research muscle, as I'm sure both of you, who are very engaged in different ways, understand. So having somebody that's been in the healthcare sphere and is a compliance expert, and then it comes to the dentistry, we just meld really well. But sometimes it's funny because I'll say, I think you need to change this word from a legal perspective. Should we not say allege here? And then and then sometimes when we're talking about the science articles, he kept writing at one point, he goes, a systemic review. I'm like, the word is systematic. I'm like, how about you stick to this lane and I'll stick to that lane? Because I kept reading this. I'm like, systemic? What is this about? And then I realized, wrong word, buddy. So again, going back to it, look, Neki, you have a problem with a radiograph, you call an oral radiologist. You have a problem with, sedation in some way, and you're curious about what's working or not working. You may consult a dental anesthesiologist or a surgeon. You know what I mean? And that's how we grow and get better. You surround yourself with the right people.
I love it.
Definitely. So this is a bit more of a, maybe a philosophical question, but I'm at a point in my career where I have a lot of ideas. Like, I'm an ideas guy, and I've had a note on my phone for years and years and years, like $1 million ideas, right? And it has everything from, start a electric rocket company to, something actually that has some utility. How did you know when you came up with this idea that it didn't belong on my $1 million idea note and it was actually a viable business? What steps did you take to make sure that it was a viable business?
You have to know, first of all, compliance about building a business and about making sure you're doing things the right way, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, as you do in dentistry or any job, really. When you say, is it $1 million idea? Well, you don't know until somebody buys it. You don't know. And this constant fear that people have about launching into something, you have to make sure that financially, time-wise, mental and physical energy, you're able to do it. Let me ask Neki, how'd you know your courses were going to be popular?
You know what? I made the course for one person, and if one person signed up, I was satisfied. And then it just blew up. Yeah.
Exactly. But you didn't know.
No. It was a massive time gamble. Right?
We're doing a podcast right now. We could be talking to, we could be the only 3 people listening, but we're not.
Bruce, we are 124th in South Africa. So we could use a little bit of respect right now, Bruce.
Well, hello to my friends in Johannesburg and Cape Town. It's frightening that we're not big everywhere else. So,
too funny.
You don't know. You don't. And you just got to be able to fall flat on your face. Part of yoga philosophy, which I learned in becoming a teacher, is you don't own the result. You can only do your job well researched with good intentions, and then the result will be what it'll be. But if you're constantly focused on that implant's better look perfect on the x-ray, that implant's got to be, I have a vision of what it's going to look like, you're going to miss the steps you're doing to get that implant in. So if it does fail, you're not even going to remember what happened. Let me ask the 2 of you, how often have you driven somewhere and not realized how you got there?
God, daily.
Right.
You're focused on everything else. Yeah.
Right. So that's the mind-body disconnect, and that's where you realize you got to recenter yourself. I mentioned in my talk at the FCDSA, the student meeting, where I said, what's the worst thing you can ever say to a patient? Everybody's like coming up with words. And I said, this is the worst thing you can ever say to a patient. That audible sigh, which says you're disinterested, you don't give a crap, like get away from me, I don't give a shit, whatever. So, somebody reached out to me and said their clinic partner says they sigh a lot. And we talked about it. And what happened was we broke it down, and sometimes the mind wanders. Do they see me as an expert? Do they think I know what I'm doing? What am I having for lunch? Oh my God, I hope this instrument's sharp. Your mind goes in a million different directions. And that sigh is sort of like your brain sucking in oxygen and resetting and going, yo, buddy, pay attention. And then, you come back to where you are. So I think, being able to have that focus and just recognize when your mind is wandering and do things one at a time. Like, you've got a list of $1 million ideas. Okay, are you working on all of them at once?
Working on none of them because they're all garbage. all my good ideas are not in that list.
Well, that would explain why you're still poor. But
Yeah, exactly.
The toothbrush that brushes for you. That one's coming next, right?
There's something like that on there for sure.
Wakes you up in the morning, like whatever. Yeah.
So Bruce, I'm just so fascinated by you because you're an orthodontist, you're a facial pain specialist, you work in Mount Sinai, you just wrote an article for an endo journal and Morning Floss. How does a guy like you find the time to do this? Like, how do you find the ability to organize your thoughts, to direct your attention to different things all at the same time?
Well, first of all, the article that came out in Endo, it was a master's project by an amazing young guy, Mohammed El-Barbary. So this was his project. I helped him with a section of that project.
So you photobomb the project?
Yeah, I know. No. Look, I know a lot of people who walk through labs and somehow ended up on a paper. They went in to borrow a pen and their third author, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was interesting. There's a few of those out there, but I was tasked with helping him with a certain part of the clinical exam, and being one of the clinicians involved, helping educate him on certain aspects of facial pain and everything. So that was my lane. Morning Floss, Elliot and I have a divide and conquer. There are certain things he controls and certain things he needs me to do. So I can't be all things to all people. I'm definitely not that smart. And I limit my time. And I'll tell you guys, at that student conference, I think there was like 6 or 7 people came up to me on stage and they said, how do you say no? No, it was at my facial pain talk. They came up and said, how do you say no? And these are young people still. Yeah. How do you say no? And I said, you say, you know what? I'm not going to be able to do any good for you right now. If I do help you, it's going to be a crap job. And I don't want to do a crap job for you. So you say, I can't help you today. Maybe I can help you in 3 months. Let's circle back. But learning, you can't be all things to all people. I've tried. I got 2 ulcers doing it. And then I portion my time accordingly. And if I find I can't do something, I just say, I'm sorry, I can't do this right now. I'm not going to be able to help you. Like, it's worse to dive in and then do a crap job. And then they're like, oh, Necky's useless. Like, why did you say you're going to help me with this? But I've learned to say no, and it's painful for a pleaser, and we're all pleasers because we're in dentistry. You know what I mean?
Isn't that the truth? Yeah.
But saying no is a good thing. And I said, it's hard, but just say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to give you my best effort.
For sure. To be clear, Necky is the king of doing one thing really, really, really well. We talk about this all the time.
Crappily or something? Is this what you're saying? No.
No, like we talk about it all the time. I'm like, Necky, man, like you can expand to like all over Canada. You can do it. He's like, no, I don't want to do it. I just want my one practice. I want to, be really, really good at that. But I want to bring the conversation to, a point which we were speaking in parallel about, which is mental health, right? Like being all things to all people, that weighs down on you. That weighs down on you if you're a student. That weighs down on you if you're a practice owner juggling a million different things. That weighs down on you if you are a podcaster, whatever it may be. How do you manage your mental health, and how do you think that dentists, whether it be dentists or dental students, can do the same?
You mean how have I badly managed my mental health? Is that what you're asking? Um,
Ideally
you
well.
know, but this is something, I respect, I didn't know how many practices Neki had or whatever, but I'll tell you, former patient of mine is a surgeon. And I said, oh, how come you're not doing this? How come you're not doing this? How come you're not involved in this? And he says, I like to take small bites and chew them really well. He said, I would just want to be really good at one thing. When I became a specialist, when I became an orthodontist, people said becoming a specialist is a cop out because then you only have to focus on one thing. You don't have to be good at everything, so that's part of mental health and, not judging yourself. I still do it, like whatever. I'm human, but it's this constant judging and criticizing ourselves. And yes, we can blame social media because of all that. And we can get into the neuroscience of it, which, people will start, the snore laws involved, they'll start nodding off. But let's just go briefly. You look at your phone at night without a blue blocker, your habenula is stimulated. Your habenula makes you feel disappointment. Anterior cingulate cortex, part of where pain is processed. Guess what else is processed there? The feeling of FOMO. So you're looking on Instagram going, I don't have abs like that. Oh, I'm in the snow. I don't have my blue blocker on. I'm feeling left out and disappointed. And now I'm feeling the pain of a toothache. And then you wake up in the morning and no wonder I feel like crap, so we're always looking at what everybody else is doing. It's very easy. Look, Neki, you got great hair,
Thanks,
I could
man. You don't see my bald spot here, man.
Oh, whoa. See?
I know, man. Okay,
that's perfect. That's Instagram.
Yeah.
I didn't know until you dipped your head down that, it's a little thin on top.
I'm going to fix it. All right, Bruce, I'm going to fix it.
Unlike Akil, who looks like Superman with his curls.
I know, right?
But you see, I could look at you and I look at Akil, he's got a guitar and he's got cool art in the background. I'm creating this narrative of what his life is like.
Huh.
I don't know that he's a poor dental student who eats ramen every day. Like until he tells me.
By choice.
By choice. But you know what I mean? Like we're so busy looking at what everybody else is doing. We take the focus off of what we're doing. And then you get upset, that I don't look like that. My work doesn't look like that. And, nobody goes on Instagram and said, yeah, I went on a date with someone. I ate Mexican, got bloated and gassy. They never called me again. And, happy Monday. Nobody writes a post like that, so sorry, go ahead.
No, Bruce, early in my career, like this is, I had some questions for you because early in my career, say 0 to 10 years of my career, I was so focused on how green the grass was of my colleagues. I wasn't focused on my own grass, and I was always seeing what they were doing, always looking over the fence, and it made me feel inferior. And social media is multiplying that times 10 for every single dentist out there. Now, 15 years out, I'm finding it, I'm not so much looking at other people, but I think the hardest thing plaguing dentists now is expectations of yourself, expectations that you place on yourself, that your patients place on you. And I think it might be, if I was going to explain the biggest problem I see dentists facing. Now, you're an actual expert in this field. Would you agree with me, or do you think that there's something more to this?
Well, I hate the word expert. I always laugh. It's like, an expert is someone from out of town with slides.
That's exactly what I say. You're a bum in your own backyard. But
that's the definition of an expert. I still feel it. I still remember. Look at Jessica Metcalf, who talks about imposter phenomenon. And she's a former Sinai resident, as is Alero Boyo, who's finishing the MD oral surge. Two very accomplished women. And I remember we were having pizza at my place one time and I said, oh yeah, they asked, it was Jessica. She goes, imposter phenomenon. And she goes, when does it go away? I'm like, never. I still judge myself. When I was in practice, people would come back and go, I love my smile. You did such a good job. And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, let's see you 5 years from now. Let's see if it's still holding. Let's see if the light opens up. So what I think part of the problem is going on a bit of a social media diet. Social media has to be seen like a drug, use as directed. and only use the amount that is right for you, and realize when you're overdosing on it. That's number one. Number two, being that person that posts stuff like James Andrews, or he's Irish, but he's living in Australia. He's an orthodontist who trained at UBC for ortho. I don't know how this guy reads everything he does, but he posts the good and the bad and the limitations. And I'm like, oh, you're human. Seeing the yoga instructor fall over. It's what you choose to consume. Just like if you don't eat cake every day, you're going to feel sick. You don't eat cake every day. So why do you consume social media images that you know are harmful to your health? So I think there needs to be a lot more honesty in dentistry to say, yeah, I've had 2 ulcers. Yeah, I feel like crap a lot of the time. Yeah, if somebody squeezes the toothpaste in the middle, I'm going to lose my crap on them. Do you know what I mean? Like, because you're human, and there's this thing about not being human. So when you say expert, one thing I feel I'm becoming a better person at is communication. And I've changed the way I talk to patients completely. And that's thanks to Danielle Offrey. What patients say, what doctors hear. Her last name's OFRI. If you get anything out of this podcast, please just go read her book. And when you change how you talk to patients, I can tell you as a specialist who the dentist is just meeting the patient. I'm like, oh, I know who you go to, because it's like attracts like. So I think you have to cultivate the practice in the clinic, like Ken Montague talked about, through the music he plays, the art on the wall, and his vibe. Even, Jen Pasternak, Grand Street Dental, one of the things she said to us when we asked her, she said, I put a part of my life on my Instagram. They see me on the weekends. And she said, if they don't like what they see, then don't come to me, because you're not going to like everybody you meet. So if I could give advice to younger practitioners is be yourself, be who you are, look at what Necky's doing to say, wow, I aspire to that, or I've learned something from him, but don't do it in a jealous way. Do it in a way that you're going to learn, and then be who you are. And guess what? You're going to attract patients who vibe with you, and you're not going to get people who are going to drive you crazy, and look, you still are, but the majority of the people with you will vibe with you. And I wish I could have told my younger self that, and that you can't please everybody. What is it? You can try and please everybody all the time, or die trying, or something like that. And sure, you're a certain personality, you're a happy-go-lucky guy, but you're serious, you're focused, you have a great personality. Maybe that's not for everybody. Maybe that's not for the super serious person who, doesn't want laughter in the clinic. You need to be a certain way. Great. There's somebody else for this patient.
Yeah, you can't be the dentist for everyone, man. I totally
No, and if a patient leaves your office, reflect and think, is this a trend? Mm-hmm. And if it's not a trend, then you have to say to yourself, okay, I wasn't for this person. I hope they're happy wherever they go. But I have learned to take control of the narrative in discussing things with patients. And I've learned an order in which I say things. And I lecture about this because when you have the structure and there's certain things I say, when I do that, the majority of people are going to you're on their side. And I've said to patients, I go, we're not on either side of the net here. Like, sure. If you feel this is an adversarial relationship, then I cannot help you.
Definitely. And to be clear, it is physically impossible to not like Necky. Like, I am so confident about this. Like me, I'm a bit of an ass. So like, yeah, it's quite easy to not like.
Yeah, that's coming off the screen. No, I'm kidding.
But Necky, it's impossible to do. But I mean, this whole idea of poor mental health in the profession. I mean, and it's not everywhere, necessarily, but when you look at it, especially in my sphere, which is the dental student community, you almost have to beg the question, how upstream are we willing to take this issue in order to get to a solution? Because when you get some very hyper-focused, hyper-motivated, people who got 3.99s in undergrad and now, are kind of middle of the pack, lower of the pack, of course it's going to hit them, right? So how do we look upstream and try to remedy this issue before it becomes, a problem?
Well, I think one of the things that was done is, you don't get into dental school like in my day after 1 or 2 years of undergrad, although I went to grade 13, so I had that extra sort of maturation year. There are programs that are 5 years long where you have that little bit of extra time before you get out. New York State, you can't practice unless you've done a residency of some sort for a minimum of 1 year. Then it's also the expectation thing. What I find a lot, and you're still a dental student, I'm sure Neki can recall as well. For some reason, you live in this fear all the time of retribution, or someone's gonna stop your career in its tracks, or someone's gonna say something about you and you're gonna get canceled. So I don't think it's incumbent solely on the people doing the teaching. I think it's incumbent upon the students as well. And we see on Instagram, people have a bad day at the office or clinic, 5 paragraphs of, how about what happened to them and how destructive it was. Okay, what are we doing to help this person, or what is this person doing to help themselves, and what are the resources? Because I always say that if you're in your office, if someone says, this isn't working, I always say you don't allow someone to say something's not working unless they have 2 or 3 resolutions that they want to propose.
Like
Otherwise, it's just complaining. It's just ranting. Like if I say, well, I don't think, we're booking the patients properly and this person's waiting, this person's waiting. Stop. Okay, well, thank you for complaining. How would you like to see it resolved? And there's a lot of pop psychology people, and I discussed this with someone who's an organizational psychologist recently. There's all these pop psychologist people on Instagram putting out these, this is destructive to your health. This is going to ruin your mental health. I have yet to see this very famous psychologist. I'm scrolling through and going, is there a solution in here? Because, I'm getting depressed. I'm starting to feel bad about myself, and I'm starting to worry about everybody else. So I think a lot of people that are out there, I see so many people that we both know giving free webinars, or discounting a webinar, or it's free for students. We have to make this stuff accessible, because otherwise we're just rattling people and we're not offering a solution. We're like, the sky is falling, but we're not giving them an umbrella.
Such a good point.
I totally hear you. Bruce, back to the patient communication thing. I'm dying to ask you. We all have those patients that maybe criticize our work, or, they aren't involved in accepting part of the problem for the work, because we're not working on 18-year-old human healthy people all the time. We're working on 75-year-olds with diabetes, and, they're not accepting of the risk no matter how much you tell them. What can you tell a patient when you have a not so ideal outcome, and there's not much more, or you don't know what else to do?
It's funny you say that, because I was asked to give a talk at the Endo Symposium at U of T. So I titled it "Stuff Happens."
Yeah.
The rough conversation. So
yeah.
Gary Glassman, the endodontist, gave me some disastrous PAs. So I included them. And I said, I just pointed to people in the audience. I said, this is my tooth. Please tell me what happened and what we're going to do. And everybody just stood up. I was like, nothing came out. Yeah. First of all, you have to, and Andrea Johnstone is a phenomenal periodontist, and I learned from her, you have to help people own their disease.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not willing to take responsible for their disease and understand this is how they got there, let's say somebody's 500 pounds and 45 years old, and they go to the trainer, and after a week they call and say, nothing's happened. The trainer has to turn around and say, you know what, it took you 45 years to get to this point. I'm here to try and make you healthy, but it's not going to happen in a week.
Yeah.
What are you doing? How are we partnering? It's very difficult to look in the mirror and realize you're responsible for the problem, or partly responsible for the problem. It's very easy to blame everybody else. But if we can't engage the patient and say, you know what, how do you think you got to this point? Why do you think this tooth fell out? Why do you think you have gum recession? Asking these open-ended questions. Have you ever said to a patient, why do you think you have recession? And then they sit back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, ask them.
I need to. Yeah. No, you're totally right.
So, and I have a stage of things that I go through and how to interact with the new patient. But I always say, well, how do you think you got to this point? Why do you think this has fallen out? This is cracked. Well, I chew ice. Do you think that's a good idea? And then you know what I say to patients? they see me because at the hospital we have paper charts still because of, security with the cloud. So it's kind of fun still having paper charts. They like, what are you doing? I said, I'm writing in quotation marks, you chew ice. And they're like, no, 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 don't write that. I'm like, you're damn right I'm writing it. And then I'm not lecturing them or wagging my finger at them, but they know I'm like, gotcha.
Yeah.
Don't tell me, when a patient says their teeth have shifted, I'm like, do you wear your retainer? Yeah, most of the time. I said to the parent, let me translate for you. That means never.
Yeah.
Most of the time means never. So I'm just like, I'm not here to judge you. If you chew ice, that's great. But understand if you chew ice, you're going to crack your teeth. So if you want to come in here every 6 months, losing a tooth or needing a crown or an implant, totally cool. Totally cool. Fantastic. But it's up to you. So engaging people to own their disease is one of the best things I ever learned. And I ask questions and I ask hard questions because as dentists, we're like, oh, I don't want to upset the patient. Oh, I don't want them to get mad at me. I'd rather they get mad at me and go somewhere else and blame someone else for their failed treatment than blame me.
For sure. Bruce, what's your demeanor with patients? Because we had a conversation last week about, admittedly, I'm not the most, outwardly emotional guy. Like I'm not the guy that like kind of puts my hand on a patient's shoulder. Like that's just not my thing. Good or bad, I don't know.
But I am. I totally am.
But Neki is, and we have like different demeanors. What is your demeanor with patients?
Let me count the failures. How many have I had? I try to make them understand that I am in their corner.
I like that.
I have some experiences, recently where I say to students, let's say you're my patient and you've been in pain for 10 years. So I say, hey, Keel, how long have you been in pain? 10 years. Oh, great. Do you floss? So wait a second. You just told me you've been in pain for 10 years. Let's just stop and say, that sucks. What's it like being in pain for 10 years?
Yeah.
Then I'll ask you if you floss. So there's a part of the conversation called the phatic, P-H-A-T-I-C, phatic part of the conversation. Hey, oh, you were a consultant. My brother's a consultant. Where were you a consultant? Oh, you're from wherever. You're from Saskatoon. Oh, that's so cool. Nobody does that. It's all transactional. And you're covered in PPE. No one sees your face. It's all impersonal. They wouldn't be able to pick you out of a police lineup. So how do we and so Neki's personality comes off him like heat. People know that he's energetic, he's engaged, he wants to do their best for them. So how do we get that across? Guess what? You say, you know what? I just want to do my best for you. I would feel bad if this didn't work out the way I wanted. And when it's not working out, you stop. You put a mirror in their hand and say, this is not what I want to see. Carlos Quinones, who's now, I think they call him the vice chair, but he's the dean of the dental school at Western. He said he did a study where he looked at like, why do people complain to the college? And what he found was it came out to over 100% because there was overlap. Like 56% was clinical or something and 52% was communication. I'll argue that it's all communication.
Yeah, totally.
You don't want to tell someone the risks because you don't want to upset them. You don't want to, I don't know, explain to them certain options because you think they don't want them. You bias all the time and you can never eliminate bias. You cannot be culturally competent. You can only be culturally aware. So if I look at you and I go, oh, he's a dental student, he's got like beat up running shoes. I'm not going to tell him about jaw surgery. I'm just going to tell him a quick fix. Well, how do I know what your priorities are? How dare I decide what's right for you until I present to you all the options? And you may say, I've been saving up for this. My uncle's going to help me with this. I don't know. And that's the worst thing you can do to a patient is make decisions for them without engaging them in the conversation. Because now you've biased them and you've denied them the care they expect and deserve. It's not your right.
Bruce, I just love you, man. That's exactly that's just awesome. I totally hear exactly what you're saying, and that's exactly how I feel as well. But, credit comes where credit is due. And I feel the most difficult aspect of dentistry is chronic pain. And the fact that you've decided to tackle that head on is, mind blowing to me. But how do you deal with the patient? I know you said like, you want to show them on that you're on their side, but what does it do to you constantly seeing people in pain every day? And you may not be able to fix it because they've been in pain for so long. Do you internalize that pain?
Yes. But I set expectations. I tell them right off the bat, the minute they sit in the chair, I may not have an answer for you. I wish I could pull a pill out or send you for a procedure, but I don't know that there is going to be one, and I don't know I'm the person to give you the answer. So when you set the expectation for a conversation, it mitigates it. And, for instance, Neki, I had a patient who went and had herself edentulated, all her teeth removed.
Yeah.
And she knew, she was told a million times not to do that. Guess what? She still has the same pain that she had before. So what should I do? Well, told you so. No. This woman was in intractable pain and just was so desperate, she did what she thought she should do. So number one, I set expectations. Number two, I have all these sort of, there's Jacob Matino, who is a former Sinai resident. He's out in the community. He helped me. He sent me pictures. He goes, why do you keep writing everything? Why don't you pre-print some stuff? And I was like, thank you, Jacob. Again, how do I do everything? I have people who help me and participate. I'm not doing it myself by any stretch of the imagination. So I show a carpet bunched up in front of the door, a visual for a displaced disc without reduction. I have 3 circles, psychology, physiology, anatomy, and in the middle it says chronic pain. I said, if I ignore one of these circles, I failed you. If you ignore one of these circles, you failed yourself.
Yeah.
And so I talk a lot about psychology. I talk a lot about, the reasons behind certain behaviors and such. And I keep reminding them. And even on my form, Neki, it says, there is no cure for a TMD, only management. The natural progression of a disc displacement is locking with pain. That's why we try to do things that are in bold letters, conservative and reversible. I've set the expectation. And I've had countless patients say to me, I wasn't able to do anything, and they're bawling their eyes out and they're, thank you so much. I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, for what? And they said that you just listened and you tried.
Man, my girlfriend's going through Invisalign right now, and I'm gonna admit I'm not the best when it comes to TMJ issues, and I admit that. But she's just like, Neki, I need to see a real dentist. And I'm like, what do you mean a real dentist? I am a real dentist. Like, you're not helping me at all here, man. And I'm like, I'll send you to the chiropractor. What do you expect me to do? Like, I don't know what I can do. So I totally hear that. I just need to set the expectation that I can't fully fix this. But
and nor should you try. But that's when in doubt, refer it out. That's the most important thing. And
the two buddy in Toronto.
Yeah, I'm happy to see her. The 2 last things that I say to a patient when I'm done, when I do a treatment plan, I have them teach it back to me and I draw it out for them and they save it. I draw a tree. I go, hey, once again, I'd hate if I miss something. Where am I going to send you if this has a problem? Oh, you're going to say, oh, right. Then I say to them, does the plan make sense? Yeah, or no, or they have a question. And the very last thing I say to them, and this is where you have to think it and feel it sincerely yourself. Thank you for letting me look after you.
Ooh, I like that.
And I learned it from Dr. Offrey because it's a privilege to look after your own needs, as they say. I don't know where I read it, but it's an honor to look after the needs of somebody else.
You are damn right it is. I love that, man.
If you take a step back and remember why it is you're here, as Carlos tells the students, to be of service, and how do you do that? By being your best. If you take a step back to remember that, guess what? You're going to put food on the table. You're going to have a roof over your head. You don't need to fill your clinic with marble and gadgets and everything, because that's not going to treat anybody. It looks pretty, but then, a kid throws up on your marble floor and stains the ground, and then there you go.
Bruce, can we be friends? Like, can we be homies, man? I just love you, man. Because you're saying all the stuff that you're answering all my personal questions in my head here, man. This is
Bruce, have you seen Stutz on Netflix? It's Jonah Hill and his therapist.
Yeah.
Your drawing your drawings remind me of that. It's a
You know,
therapy
like
session and a dental appointment in one.
I have decades of mistakes on you both. And I acknowledge my mistakes. And I even had a colleague once say to me, he goes, you know, you scare people. And that was a wake up call. And, you know, I didn't realize, you know, that I was having that impact. And apparently I scared more the people I was working with and referred to more than, you know, I have a running joke with Goth Sue, the prosthodontist, because they always they were talking, a bunch of them, him and Mario Rotel and all these guys, they were at a Seattle study club. And so they were talking about how if they get a text from me that says, you need to call me or we need to talk, they're like, oh no, like what did I do? Like what happened? So somebody messaged me and said they were discussing it. So I got my phone, I grabbed it, and I picked out Goth's name. I said, you need to call me. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm only kidding. He's like, oh, don't do that. But you know why they're like that? Because they really want to do the best, and they do care, and they do know that I care. And you want to surround yourself with people who all care. I feel like we're conjugating the word care. I care, you care, we care, they care, you know. And I think that's important. And to recognize you're going to make mistakes, you're going to fall flat on your face. And the reason we don't try to do things, it's not an incapacity, it's an unwillingness. You don't want to be seen as fault. Like, can you imagine if we were in high school? Well, maybe a kill, I don't know. But when we were in high school, if every time you fell flat on your face or spilled something on your shirt, someone was taking a video of it, like, hell, that would have been a nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes you just got to say, yeah, I fell flat on my face. You know, Gord Schwartz is a PhD periodontist, and he was training when I was training doing ortho. We were at Mount Sinai, and somebody said to him, did you check the occlusion? He said, no, I forgot. And all us younger, you know, because he stood beside him and was like, you know? Wow. He admitted. Yeah, people admit mistakes. And so he said, I'm going to go do it now. Nobody cared. Yeah. But the rest of us are like, you're our hero. You know, can you be our leader? You know, because he had the balls to just say, no, I forgot. Like, I'm human. I didn't think of it. I got preoccupied, whatever.
Yeah,
you
for
know,
sure.
I fall down when I stand on one foot in a yoga class because congratulations, you're a human.
Does working with patients experiencing chronic pain give you perspective on your own life ever? Like, do you ever look inwards and say, wow, like I'm really lucky?
Well, and you know, Mount Sinai treats, you know, it's one of the largest, or if not the largest department to treat patients with physical and mental challenges. And, you know, I'll tell you, you see parents wheeling their children in, and some of these children are now in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. And the parents themselves are in their 60s and 70s. And their life has been devoted to caring for this child. And now they're at the point where they're like, what's going to happen to this child when they're gone? And I always say to the residents, and, you know, I always say, you think you're having a bad day?
That you just put it, it's perspective, right?
Well, one of my residents called me recently. I won't say which one, but because he's still there, or she's still there. I won't say which one. So called me and he said, she said, can I talk to you? They said, and I said, sure. So they call and I said, before you say anything, did anyone die? And they said, no. I said, did you harm anyone? And they said, no. I said, okay, let's talk. You know, let's just
imagine if they said yes. That'd be
then it would be a whole different story.
I'll be right there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just grabbing my keys, you know, but it's about, like you said, it's hard to put it into perspective. It's hard when you're constantly looking at images of other people faking their lives, pretending they're on holiday, but really in a rented piece of a plane looking through a toilet seat, pretending it's the window of the plane.
I saw that picture. That's wicked.
You know, or yeah. I think they have a great head of hair until they move their hair. I'm like, oh, okay, they're human. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You know, or it's like when you see a famous athlete or usually an actor, and you see them on holiday with a huge pot belly. You're like, yes,
Leo.
I feel better about myself.
Hey, Bruce, Do you find, because I know you're a yoga teacher too, do you find yoga has allowed you to create that separation between clinic life and personal headspace?
Yeah, it's like baking, baking, I sort of like, I become the alchemist and I get upset. I'm the one that sits there with the scale going 300.1. Nope. And I keep flicking out the grains of flour until it's 300. And then I'm like, oh God, I feel better. So yeah, they've actually shown that acute PTSD yoga is one of the best treatments amongst many others, because it helps you learn helps teach your mind your behavior matters.
Mm.
So if you're on the mat and you're not paying attention, you're going to lose track of the class. You're going to fall over more often than you should. And then you're going to hurt yourself. So it's almost like you can't help but focus. And then all of a sudden, you just forget for a bit. And even in meditation, like I say to people, you're going to think of things. When I was in yoga training, the teacher said, why do your minds think? And everybody's like, oh, I don't know. So why do you? She goes, because that's what a mind does.
Yeah.
You muppets. That's what minds do. Oh, yeah. So when you realize you're always going to have thoughts in your head, but you just let those thoughts space out. And you just recognize that it's not helping me right now. Me worrying that, Neki said this, or, maybe I sounded weird on the podcast, blah, blah, blah. Whatever. It'll be forgotten about in about 30 seconds. It just doesn't matter. Now, I'm not saying give up and go, good enough. No, that's not what I'm saying. But put it in bloody perspective and recognize, does this really matter? Did I do harm? And I always say in one of my talks, I say about do no harm, but do no harm to yourself first.
Yeah.
Because if you're lousy in your mood, or you're not sleeping, or you're not having time to study or keep up on things or whatever, then you need to take yourself out of the game.
Yeah, because you're not good to anyone else.
And what good is it if you're working 6 days a week? You're really going to make that much more money?
Yeah. It's funny because like these newer dentists are so focused on that. Like they want to work as much as they can. They want to pay off their loans at their own
100%.
self-health detriment.
Right.
And, being one of those people when I graduated, I can see the error in my ways and how destructive it can be to your entire career so early on in the career. So I'm glad you're teaching our next generation of dental students that through your lectures that there's different ways to do it.
But fiscally, that is a big problem. And when you ask, like Akil, you ask, I don't think I answered it fully, but what can we do upstream? Unfortunately, dental education is probably the most expensive education you can have. I read something that said an NYU dental education is $750,000 US. That's assuming you're living in a broom closet with 42 roommates. Like if you're not, then it's probably $850,000 US.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
So then that's a pressure that is like no other, and whether consciously or subconsciously, that's going to affect your treatment plans. Like I said, consciously or subconsciously, because that financial stress will just wear you down. So that's a bigger theme. And how do we address that? I don't have an answer for you, but I think in addition to my generation and, quasi my generation, recognizing, everybody loves to blame millennials for everything. We're all guilty of it, making jokes about millennials. Ha, ha, ha. Okay. At the end of the day, people made jokes about us when we were growing up going, you people are idiots, so, instead of trying to change everybody, meet them where they are. Number one. Number two, students need to be a lot nicer to themselves and each other, because I know what happens in those WhatsApp chat groups. One wrong word and you are ostracized. And like I said before, that ostracization, God, did I say that right? Can feel like physical pain because of what's in the brain. So, students have a responsibility to each other to be a little nicer and less cancel culture, etc. But there's all this blaming going on. Let's blame the instructors. Let's blame each other. Let's blame the system. Great. How are we going to fix it? Sitting around, carping about it is not solving the problem. It's good to get it off your chest. But, like you said, do I internalize that physical pain and that sadness people have? Yeah. I do, but I've also learned to recognize I, like other people, I can't fix everything. I can only do my best, hear what they have to say, offer them things outside the medical realm of some form of therapy or talking. I have patients. I have a fellow from Saudi that's doing a facial pain year with us, and he hears me on the phone. I have patients that I hang up and I said, did you want to speak to me again in 3 months? Yes, please, can we? And then I hang up and he said, you're not doing anything. And I said, but I am, because they just feel better. And it happened the other day, and he laughed and he goes, oh, this lady says, you know what? Even though I still have that pain, I feel better having talked to you. So I hung up the phone. I looked at him and went, hello, so
up top.
Yeah. Don't discount that 10-minute conversation.
Right. From like a selfish, like student's perspective, right? How do you teach these sort of philosophies and ways of thinking? Like, for example, money shouldn't matter. It's like, the only person that's ever said that, the person with money, right? How do you teach these principles without, letting people just fall on their face and having this natural progression of just growing up and living life?
So if we take a step back and we look at how did we get here? The things that I've read are post-World War II. Parents were like, oh my goodness, we've just come out of World War II. I don't want my little baby to suffer at all. I'm going to do everything I can. And that just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. There's a great article on safetyism by the last name I think is Fox. I can send it to you guys. How did we get to this point where people are afraid to walk out of the door? Lorraine Skenazy talked about, something free kids, range free kids or something like that. I can't think of free range kids. At the age of 9, knowing her age, her and her husband knew their son was very responsible. They took him on the New York subway a million times, and albeit it was many years ago, maybe in terms of safety, she might think differently, I don't know. But they trained him. So what did they do? They put him on the subway and they met him 3 stops up. People wrote into the newspapers like that she should be arrested and stoned in a public square. Like they thought she was the worst. But I always say, if you have a child that cannot make their own medical appointment, or dental appointment when they graduate high school, then that's a problem. So to your point, we've gone from the pendulum of suck it up, figure it out, which was hello, what I dealt with, that was my life, to everything's not my fault, you need to help me. And the pendulum has to somehow find its way to the middle, because I don't think anybody wants to blame people and feel they have no autonomy or control over their lives. Nobody wants to really feel that, do they? No, nobody wants to not have an answer or not be able to control things. So yeah, cost is, I don't know how to solve that. And what do you tell somebody who graduates with $700,000 of debt? What do you say to them? Suck it up.
Who gave you $700,000 to begin with? That's
yeah. But what do you say? I know, but then you're in the position of now you blame them for, you know what I mean? So it was a little late now, Necky, because they're in the debt. But the point being is, how did they get here? Where's the responsibility? Yeah. And also who helped you make those choices? And the financial burden is a huge problem. And I don't know how it's going to be addressed. I have zero answers for that. Akil, you're the consultant. Maybe you can come up with something better than I can.
That's the next podcast. I think we were going to actually solve that whole problem.
Well, that's great. Yeah. Okay. Stay tuned, everybody. But so, how do we deal with this? Is this blame game with no resolution, I think, is part of the problem. This cancel culture where everybody says, maybe doesn't have the answer or doesn't say something that somebody likes, and we just dispatch them. And look, there are plenty of people that should be canceled and dispatched. Don't get me wrong. And we know who they are, people that commit, crimes and such. We're not talking about that. We're just talking daily life. Okay. So when you have this situation, it's just, people just feel they have no control anymore. And 100%. It just becomes the norm to just blame everybody. When I did something wrong at school, I would come home and say, oh, this happened at school. What do you think the first thing my parents said? What did you do wrong?
Yeah.
And
now it's what did they do to you?
Yeah. I get it. I'm not blaming anybody, but we got to figure out how to massage that and get it swing
the pendulum. Yeah.
swing the pendulum, because nobody should be told to suck it up and like, you know, and just bear down and deal with it. By the same token, we can't have people flailing around with no tools in the toolbox of what to do when they have a bad day.
100%. And hopefully that's the, you know, outcome of some of the work you do and some of the work Nike does, is equip people with those tools.
You know, you can't be great at everything. You're not going to be great at everything. You got to find what you think you're good at. And, you know, you guys talked about passion. A friend of mine who's a very, you know, very successful marketer, you know, she tells her clients, passion is for the bedroom, not the boardroom. So passion is a very difficult thing, you know.
I was wondering where you were going with that.
Yeah, he's like, oh God, we're gonna have to cut that out of the podcast. So the point being is, passion is great until you hit a roadblock. Necky has a passion for taking out wisdom teeth. Yeah, you don't think he gets kicked in the butt every day, you know, with a tooth that doesn't want to come out or something? And then what is he supposed to do? Throw his hands up and say, I've lost the passion? Do you break up with your...
You question everything you do. Why did I come to work today?
Yeah. You know, I'm not doing a service for anybody today. I'm doing a disservice.
That's
you know,
right.
but you don't break up with your girlfriends every time you have a spat. You know, you just take a step back, take a breath, and, you know, figure out what you're going to be able to do. But understanding more of the neuroscience, and that's why I love explaining it, because people realize, don't blame yourself, blame your vagus nerve. You know, if you want to blame somebody, blame your vagus nerve, but you can learn to control your vagus nerve.
Very true. Don't blame yourself, blame your vagus nerve. I think that's going to be the reel for this episode.
Yeah.
That's the title. Just that's it.
But your vagus nerve is great if you're being chased by, you know, band of elephants or whatever. But
Exactly.
and stress is motivating. It's like, got to get out of bed, got to study.
100%.
You know, I feel like I'm about to break into a Dolly Parton song in a second, but, you know, 9 to 5, but nobody wants to hear that. Your viewership in South Africa will grind to 0.
Bruce, it was a pleasure to have you on this podcast, man. You're a heck of a guy. I really hope our paths cross again. And you know what, even though we're wearing the same hoodie, I'll have to send you out an official "Hi, I'm Doctor" hoodie, because you rock that pretty good there, man.
Yours is classier than mine, so yeah.
Never stop being yourself. Never stop speaking your mind, because you never failed to impress me with your stories and your charisma. So never stop doing that.
You're both really kind, but I just don't want people to suffer in any way if I suffered. And if I can help them in that way. But I'm also, like you'll ask my residents, I'm super friendly and super kind and supportive, but step out of line, I'm going to call you on it. You know, because I don't want you ruining your career, or I don't want you harming yourself in some way because you're making a bad decision. And if people know, whether it's your patients, your friends, or your colleagues, that you're going to call them out when it's wrong, you're going to support them when it's right, then they will trust you and put their faith in your hands. And that's all you can hope for. And the people that you can't convince of that, then it's best they find somebody else.
I love it. And don't blame yourself, blame your vagus nerve. Bruce, awesome episode.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Hopefully I didn't talk too much, but you can just cut it all out if you don't like it. And thank you to your listeners, and hopefully we can continue the conversation.
And check out the Morning Floss.
Yes, please check out Morning Floss. Help us continue to grow and engage every dental professional in Canada would be phenomenal. So thank you so much for your support on that.
I love it. All right. Take care, guys.
See you there, Bruce.
Thank you.
So Neki, after 3 hours and 7 minutes on this call, but only an hour going in the pod, what do you think?
Oh man, I wasn't expecting the 2-hour outro of the episode. That I don't think we can air that, but it was amazing. Like, he is an incredible guy that you just want to continue to, poke and get to know more and more and more, because he just has, some amazing opinions of what's going on in dentistry, man.
Do you know what? He's like one of those guys. I remember there was a time where like cancel culture was like way bigger. I guess it's still big, but I had on my lock screen, just have a fucking opinion and stick to it. And that was
Yeah.
my that was my lock. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, but that was my too much time with Bruce in the after show. But
Yeah,
that was like my lock screen, and I feel like he's that guy that just has an
totally.
opinion and sticks to it.
And he doesn't give a shit. Like he doesn't care what you think. And I think that's refreshing, man, because he said something that was so important. In dentistry, we're all people pleasers, and we bend our opinions to kind of go with the general flow, just so everyone stays happy with us. And he definitely goes against the grain. And but like you don't feel like he's doing it in a negative way or in a way to hurt you. He's just doing it in the bestest of intentions, you know?
Oh, 100%. It's funny, like he's talking about, guiding people and like mentorship. And I feel like if you are lucky enough to have someone like that as your mentor,
Oh, wow.
like screw like doing well in life, like career wise, like you're just gonna do well as a person.
Yeah, totally. And you just want to hang out with him and be like, what advice does he have for you? Like, I
Yeah.
almost look at him like a big brother now because I'm like, what is he going to tell me to do different in my career so I can I can change and in the after show that we did there, you were talking. Bruce helps a lot of people, like dentists with communication and he has a lot of experience with that, working with the residents in the hospital. And it's just, it's nice that there's someone out there teaching people how to communicate because we are not taught how to communicate in dental school at all. And we almost learn on the job. Like I kind of feel bad for you, Akil, because who's going to guide you through your first several years of your career talking to patients?
Yeah. No, well, we
Yeah,
have
like
a course about communications, but it's like it's hard to teach that sort of stuff, right?
it is,
I
man.
almost feel like you need a personalized mentor to kind of show you the ways.
Totally. And like I think we've spoken about this before, but like what works for you does not work for me and vice versa. Like, man, you're never going to put your hand on someone else's shoulder and be like, I'm going to take care of you. That's just not you, man. Even though no matter how much you want it to be, it's just not you.
I know. And I think in the after show, you like the one takeaway I had, which I think he exemplifies really well, is just know who you are. Like don't try to be the
Yeah,
guy that puts your hand on the shoulder. Just be the
totally.
person that you are.
Yeah, be you and be the authentic you. And I think that's what patients want for sure. I feel like over the last several weeks, like doing these podcasts, I've gotten a huge self-appreciation of like people's journeys and what got them to where they are. And I think all of it has to do with them being authentic, whether it's, Dr. Aurora, the singing dentist, or like Bruce or Hisham Shergan, like they all have their own unique qualities and they're not trying to be anyone else. They're just being them and they've all succeeded in different ways. And I think that's pretty awesome.
100%. Man, I would love to do this after show for longer, but I am exhausted.
Yeah, I don't doubt it, man.
I think
But
yeah, let's let the listeners enjoy the episode with Bruce. We've got to have him back on soon to just shoot the shit about some other stuff. But man, that was a fun episode.
yeah, that was wicked, man. But we'll see everyone.